think this policy is a bad idea, but ignoring that for a minute, I don't even think it's possible. Like, I don't think it is possible for us to generate all the electricity right now that we'd need by 2035 to get this done. Like, it just seems like such a poorly planned and poorly thought out policy, both from the David Eby government and from the feds in Ottawa. Nicolas, Prime Minister Mark Carney is planning to totally ban the sale of new cars. Can you walk us through exactly what's going on here?
Yes, well, this policy was first pushed by his predecessor, that we all know, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, that wanted to make sure that by 2035, the all sales of new gas and diesel vehicle will not be possible. So that means that it's going to be literally a ban on gas and diesel vehicle effective in 10 years. And it seems like despite the fact that the policy was never very much popular among the population, Carney decided to push forward with it. But it seems that it has felt a bit of the pressure and the heat coming from all directions because for now, his ban has been suspended, at least for the next coming year. It was supposed to actually go into effect as soon as January 1st. So as soon as next year, based on the current policy, 20% of all new vehicles that will be sold will need to be either electric or plug-in hybrid. And eventually that threshold would move to 60% by 2030. And in 2035, it's 100% of all cars. So for now, it seems that because of all the pressure, like I said, either coming from taxpayers like us, that like our supporters or tax fighters army, or coming from the industry directly, he decided to suspend his ban and to put into place some kind of consultation for 2 months that will end by November 4th, just on time for the new budget to come out. And we hopefully will be able to get more results as soon as the commission or the consultation is over.
Right, so let's actually dig into this policy a little bit, because folks, it is bonkers. By 2035, as it stands right now, the Mark Carney government will totally ban the sale of new gas or diesel cars. So it'll make it illegal to buy a new normal car. That's a bonkers policy. But it wouldn't kick in all at once in 2035. There's this series of progressive targets that car dealerships and automotive manufacturers will have to meet. So by January 1st, just a few months from now, if the policy stays on track, a certain percentage of 20% of all vehicles sold would have to be electric or plug-in hybrids. This is a mandate from the government, but it's one that comes with really big costs for normal taxpayers. Nick, can you walk us through some of the costs that this policy would have on families struggling to get by?
Yeah, well, it's actually something important that you're mentioning here because, first of all, we don't have the money. Second, we don't have the energy, and third, the industry and the consumers don't want anything about it. So it's very surprising that the federal government is still pushing forward. And it's also important to mention that we also have two provinces who have their own policy, that their own EV mandate or own ban on gas and diesel vehicle. That will be Quebec and British Columbia, that basically spearheaded that policy on their own until the federal government decided to create its own policy for the rest of the country. But yes, it's important to mention that this policy will have direct costs on taxpayers. First of all, there was a report that was published by the Ministry of Natural Resources the last year that says basically that the whole policy, just to put into place a new recharge station in the whole country, and all the infrastructure needed for the recharge and stuff, will cost over 300 billions of dollars to taxpayers by 2040. And that's, of course, that's an approximate number. It may cost very well way more the current government continue to go forward with this. But that will be basically, well, that bill will go directly to taxpayers. And it's also important to mention that it's not like our public finances are in a good shape right now. We have seen the debt double over the last years. The interest on the debt cost us 54 billions of dollars this year. That's basically one new hospital that we build every year, every week, and we just set on fire on Sunday and start over again. So that's pretty much what we're doing with taxpayers' money at this point. And to say that we're going to spill 300 billions of dollars on a policy that nobody wants is clearly is clearly bunker at this point. Plus, and then there's the energy costs. We don't have the energy for the new cars, and basically the add up of all of those EVs on the power grid will increase energy demand by over 30% throughout the entire country, meaning that we're going to have to build new power plants. May they be nuclear, hydro dams, more wind turbines, name it. But we're still going to need more infrastructure, and that's going to come with a cost. And even if you don't have an EV, you'll still have to pay for that cost through your energy bills. So basically, you're going to be forced to pay for it one way or another. And then we have the industry saying that they can't catch up with the goals that has been set by the federal government. Yet Carney is still pushing forward. He has suspended the policy, but it's not over yet. And they literally said to him, and I'm quoting here, the CEO of Stellantis and GM went to meet him in his office. Went to meet Prime Minister Carney in his office at the very beginning of this summer and said, "Look, if we go forward with that goal, we won't we won't be able to reach that goal, and basically we will have to produce less vehicles, meaning there will be less affordable options in the car dealerships, and that will be directly paid or direct consequences on consumers and families." So basically, it has many impact, and Canadians, like I said, don't want it. We at the CTF commission our own poll with Leger, and we have found out that over 56% of Canadians don't want anything to do about it. So clearly, there's a disconnection between Carney's ambition with EVs and what the population, the industry, and what our economy can afford at this point.
Yeah, Nick, you're absolutely right. This whole EV mandate, the ban on the sale of new gas and diesel vehicles, seems like some kind of green pipe dream from Mark Carney and former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Because, folks, electric cars, electric vehicles, they use a whole lot of electricity. And electricity isn't free. You have to build the power plants to generate the electricity. You have to build the transmission stations and power lines to get the electricity from point A to your car. So there's all sorts of really major taxpayer infrastructure costs that would be needed just to power all these electric vehicles that Mark Carney wants to put on the roads. Look, your average electric vehicle uses between 3 and 6,000 kilowatt hours of electricity every year, between 3,000 and 6,000. To put that in context, a normal residential refrigerator uses about 500 kilowatt hours on average. And these numbers are all from Statistics Canada. That means that at the high end, an electric vehicle uses 12 times more energy, more electricity every year than your residential refrigerator. So imagine plugging in 12 fridges in your house today and think what that would do to your electricity bill. Now, magnify that or multiply that by the scale of a country, of Canada, and just imagine the amount of electricity we would need to plug in and power all these zero emissions vehicles that, again, Mark Carney is mandating you buy by 2035, excuse me. And Nick, you're also right. There's the federal mandate, but then there's also these provincial mandates. And you and I are sitting in the two provinces that currently have these provincial mandates, these provincial bans on the sale of new gas and diesel vehicles by 2035. British Columbia and Quebec. Now, British Columbia, as far as we've seen, is barreling ahead with these mandates. The electricity concerns, be darned. The cost concerns, be darned, from the EB government's perspective right now. But Quebec, they're starting to blink and walk away from this policy a little bit. Can you talk about how Quebec is starting to move away from it?
Yeah, actually, it's a very weird situation that we have in Quebec because not many people were expecting that. Of course, we're expecting that with all the pressure, eventually the government would just back down of his own ambition. But it was just funny to consider that this would happen without anyone actually expecting it. So basically, the CAQ government of François Legault in Quebec just decided to back down from their own policy, but just slightly. So basically they're playing with numbers. They've been playing with numbers for quite a while. At first they said that they wanted to keep a normal hybrid vehicle in the whole lot that among the vehicles that could still be sold in 2035, which is not the case in the rest of the country. It's important to mention that the federal policy and the British Columbian policy both will ban the normal hybrid vehicle, so that the Prius, the Toyota Prius, for example, except if it's a plug-in hybrid, won't be able to be sold past 2035 in the rest of the country. But
Wait,
apparently,
wait.
Quebec was playing with those rules to make sure that it actually could be possible. Now they decided to go even further down that road and decided that by 2035, 90% of all cars that will be sold will have to be either electric or plug-in hybrid, meaning that 10% of all the new cars that can be sold in 2035 can either be gas or diesel vehicle. It's actually surprising because Quebec will be then the only jurisdiction in Canada that would tolerate the sale of new gas and diesel vehicle, at least for 10% of all the new cars to be sold that year. So yeah, it's not a real back down because overall, I mean, they go from 100% to 90%. It's still a threshold that is impossible to meet for industry, and it's still maintaining the pressure on taxpayers and on the energy grid alike. But still, the fact that the Quebec government decided to go forward with such a carve out is very interesting and also inspiring because we can use that as a way to pressure the federal government and all the other, indeed, in the BC government as well, to make sure that they back down from their own or at least offer some additional carve out until the whole policy is gone.
So, Nick, sorry, I need to jump in on something you said there. Did you say that even Priuses will be banned from this? Like Toyota Prius hybrid cars will be banned under these bills, these acts of legislation? Because I've got a friend who just bought a Toyota Prius thinking that was the environmentally conscious, environmentally friendly decision. But you're telling me that even hybrids like Priuses are going to be banned under this legislation?
Well, if they cannot be plugged in, yes, they will be banned. And that's actually a very surprising thing because I do know many people in my entourage that share the same exact belief. They believe that hybrid vehicles are fine enough. More interesting if you're living in the cities, for example. And now the thing is, it seems like the federal policy right now does not mention hybrid. They only mention plug-in hybrid. And the big difference is that well, plug-in hybrid, as it says in the word, needs to be basically plugged every day, which is not the case for the normal hybrid that we have been used to for the last decade. But apparently, the federal government and the British Columbian government will be banning this type of vehicle, at least with the current state of the mandate. But I believe that there will be definitely some carve out done by those two governments down the road, just like Quebec had to do, because the reason why the Quebec government decided to include those hybrid vehicles in the calculation for the different credits that car dealership and manufacturers have to accumulate over time is because they realize that their goals is unsustainable. It's impossible to achieve. So they're playing with numbers and they're playing with type of vehicles that they will be able to that people will be able to buy at some point. And now they just realize that yeah, even if we add hybrid vehicles in the lot, it's not helping. So now it's going to be 10% of gas and diesel vehicle. And we expect that at some point they just realize that the whole policy is not making any sense. And it's funny because the Quebec government is doing that change right now, and they only brought officially that mandate last year. They did their own public consultation last year, and there was thousands of people who jumped on that public consultation. Many of our tax fighters army who made understand to the Quebec government they didn't want any of it, and yet they refused to listen. They still went forward. The industry was mad at it, but they still went forward. And now a year later, they're literally about to launch a new public consultation and redo their entire mandate because they just realized that yes, it was an unsustainable and impossible goal to achieve, and yet they still maintain it for purely ideological concern, if you ask me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And let's, like, if you'll indulge me for a second, I want to talk about the BC specific ban on the sale of gas and diesel vehicles. Because just like with the federal mandates, by 2035, 100% absolutely no gas or diesel vehicles can be sold under this existing legislation. And for car dealerships that aren't able to meet this requirement, they're going to be fined up to $100,000 by the BC government for the crime of selling a normal new car. And right now, as we're talking, there's about 3.1 million light duty cars and trucks in BC that use diesel and gasoline to power themselves. If BC were to switch all of those cars over to zero emissions vehicles, we would need to come up, and I crunched the numbers here, with 13,950 gigawatt hours of new electricity every year just to power them all. For comparison, Site C Dam, which was this really big hydroelectric infrastructure project we built in BC, creates about 5,100 gigawatt hours of electricity every year. We would need to build three, one, two, three new Site C dams just to power all these cars if we switched over entirely to ZEVs. Now, right now, we're already a net importer of electricity from the United States. We already are generating enough electricity here in BC to power all the fridges and all the devices that we have plugged in already, right? So what's the solution here? Are we just going to keep importing electricity from the United States to pay for David Eby and Mark Carney's like EV fantasy? The biggest generators of electricity in the United States are coal and natural gas. Like, we're not switching from gas and diesel powered vehicles to these magical green machines. No, we're switching from gas and diesel powered vehicles to coal powered vehicles if we go through with this policy in British Columbia. That doesn't make sense. That's like throwing a backpack of bricks on before trying to run a foot race. Like, you are weighing yourself down, you are weighing your economy down, and for what? And Nick, we've already, across Canada, seen consumer sentiment shift away from EVs. EV sales are down this year, according to Statistics Canada and S&P Global. Um, we have seen the government hand out hundreds of millions of dollars worth of corporate welfare to battery manufacturers, only to have those battery plants shut down because there's not the demand for them. Can you talk a little bit about that corporate welfare to the battery plants?
Yes, because as I said, I think at the very beginning about the cost of the whole policy, I talked about the $300 billion mark that the Natural Resource Department basically mentioned in their report. But that does not include all of the subsidy that has been thrown to the different companies like Stellantis, Honda, Volkswagen. There was also Nordvolt not so long ago in Quebec that basically went almost fully bankrupt. And we have all of those projects throughout the entire country. Over the last couple of years, the federal government alone has spent over $30 billion, and along with other provincial government in that industry. And yet they're now realizing that it's what basically a bubble. Well, the truth is that there was no reason for the federal government or any government to go and throw taxpayers' money into subsidy package to multinational, multi-billionaire companies that are quite able to invest by themselves into their own factories and able to basically, well, do what they need to do to create their own vehicles. They just don't need any pressure from the government like the with the entire EV mandate as we have seen. But it seems like the federal government and also the provincial government like Quebec and British Columbia has pushed those industries through different ways. First, we're going to force them to create those vehicles, and then we also going to subsidize them to make sure that they actually follow the plan that we have set. But it seems like the government, in all cases, has tried to be basically well control the market or create a new one by playing supply and demand. But now we're seeing that the results are not there. Now, yes, of course, the only one of the main reasons why people were buying electric vehicles over the last couple of years in Canada and in different provinces was mainly because of all the subsidy package to buy those cars. But the program has been suspended so far, and it has been brought back in Quebec, but only for half of what it was before. And it seems like there was a direct correlation between people buying those EVs and also the program being into place. So now that the program has been cut or is non-existent in most provinces, well, people are not buying those cars anymore. So it really demonstrates that the whole demand was basically artificial at some point, and it feels like the government has not understood to this point that to maintain that pressure on the market, on consumer, on the industry is completely counterproductive. Even more in the current context that we know, we are stuck in a trade war. Sadly, not the one that we have chosen, but it's as sadly we're stuck in a trade war with the United States, and the economy is not exactly in a good shape. Public finances are in the big red right now. There's rumors of a deficit of 100 billions of dollars in Ottawa. So we're really wondering how and where would that money be coming from to continue for this to push for this policy that, as I said, is unsustainable and quite impossible to achieve. And you mentioned that whole sea dam in BC. If I do remember well, I think it cost something like 16 billions of dollars to build and took almost 20 years for the whole development process. Now the thing is, if you want to push for that EV just to support for the whole energy demand over the next coming years, you would need to build all of those dams throughout the entire country or similar power plant like in by snapping your fingers. Quite literally, you would have to make it happen in less than 10 years to be able to reach to meet that goal that the government has set. It's just impossible to do at this point, and it's just a matter of time until the federal government, and I guess we have seen it with Quebec, but I think we're going to see it with EB as well. But everyone's going to realize that this mandate has to go.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Nick. And that's actually not something I'd ever considered before. But you're right, the Site C Dam took decades for them to build. By the time they located the site, Site C in this case, not Site A, not Site B, but Site C, getting shovels in the ground, doing the plannings, the consultations, actually building the structure, took decades. If we're going to switch over to 100% of new cars being electric by 2035, the shovels would need to be in the ground already. And I don't see government making those kinds of big electrical infrastructure projects, getting them done yet. So there is no way that this policy is doable. Like, ignore for a minute if it's a good idea or a bad idea. Now, I think this policy is a bad idea, but ignoring that for a minute, I don't even think it's possible. Like, I don't think it is possible for us to generate all the electricity right now that we'd need by 2035 to get this done. Like, it just seems like such a poorly planned and poorly thought out policy, both from the David Eby government and from the feds in Ottawa, and indeed from the government of Quebec. Now, Nick, for the folks at home who are watching this, who are fired up, who don't want Mark Carney to totally ban the sale of normal cars by 2035, what should they be doing?
Well, first, they should watch this video and watch other stuff that we have done before about this topic because there's so much to be said, so much to be read about it. But yes, first, follow us on all platforms, sign our petition to ask for to scrap the whole ban on gas and diesel vehicle. And the reason why it's important to sign this petition is because we basically use them to be able to reach you when it's necessary to be able to maintain the pressure and or basically to increase the pressure on the federal government. And in this case, there's a current public consultation going on. It's going to end by November 4th, and we're making sure that everyone that is signing the petition is able to reach that consultation on time to make your voice heard and make sure that the federal government will back down from this policy. So far, we know that thousands of our tax fighter army has literally jumped on that consultation. They have sent thousands and thousands of emails, and they're doing so right now. As soon as it's possible, folks, please sign that petition, share that video, and also wait for a signal because we're going to make sure that the federal government back down in no time from that policy. And once the federal government is out of the picture and the whole EV mandate has been scrapped, you can expect the both provincial government like Quebec and BC to do the same because the whole house of cards will just fall apart at this point.
Yeah, for the folks at home, taxpayers like you are already making a difference in the fight against this ban on the sale of new normal cars. The government of Quebec is watering down its policy. Mark Carney has paused the federal policy while they do these consultations. So head over to taxpayer.com/petitions, sign our petition against this new car ban from Ottawa. And that's how you'll hear about what steps you can take next to fight this ban. Whether that's jumping on the consultation and filling it out to let Ottawa know loud and clear that taxpayers don't want this policy, whether it's emailing your MP or the Prime Minister, joining the taxpayer army by going to taxpayer.com and signing that petition is the best way you can fight this ban on the sale of new cars by 2035. Nick, thanks so much for joining us today to talk about this. Folks, let us know what you think in the comment section down below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this video. Thank you so much.